AHK has this amazing feature called Hotstrings, and no matter how much I try to use them, I just can't. They're bad, essentially. Why so? Let's go to my terminal and try to type in a hotstring, which I don't have. So let me create one to show off why it's bad. Okay, so now I have this hotstring which turns help into dash dash help. Very useful for the command line. And is it working? No, not yet. And now it is. Perfect. So let's go to the terminal and try to type it in. For example, grep help. Okay, worked this time. Let's try it again. Okay, so far it's working. Does it work here? No. And by the way, the @ symbol is what I set my end characters to be. So that is correct. But it didn't work. Maybe it's just that the stars aligned in this kind of fashion that it didn't work this one time, but through testing I figured out that no, hotstrings just straight up don't work. It might be specifically because I'm using Vim mode or using a NeoVim extension for VS Code and also have Vim mode in my terminal. That's probably why the issue persists, but it shows you the idea that keep in mind your hotstrings will not work everywhere. And naturally I want them to work everywhere. If I get used to using something only to be met with some situations where I can't use it, well then it's just annoying rather than useful. Which is why I created the Hotstringer, which I have a video about. The way it worked is that it shows you an input box. First of all, you press a hotkey to say, hey, I want to input a hot string. And then you have a clean input box to type your hot string into. Once it matches at least something, it pastes it immediately. Good idea, right? Because the issue is the fact that, first of all, it can't recognize what I'm typing in, and second of all, sometimes it doesn't delete everything that I type in. Say I say help, try to convert my hot string, and then it turns to something like this. I've seen this happen a lot of times. So if my input is in some other place, that's no longer an issue. But I did notice that I severely underused this. Like, I have this feature, yet I barely use it. I don't really add much stuff to it, even though, oh, come on, like hotstrings. Don't you want to type in things that you type in way too often in an easier fashion? Apparently I wasn't. So I thought, why was that the case? Well, let's go look at the terminal. This is not usually how it goes. Usually you're around here because, well, you have typed in a lot of commands already, and you're around here. And if you watched my previous videos, you know that the input box was usually around here, meaning that I type in some command, once again, like grep, and then I want help. So I get this. I need to move my eyes from here to here. This is a lot of movement. And that actually matters, which is why I moved the input box down to the bottom. And well, I only use hotstrings in the terminal. That's also the case in VS Code, in which case I'm probably around the middle, but it's not really guaranteed. So it doesn't really matter. On Discord, your input box is at the bottom as well, in Telegram and in pretty much every place, more or less. So it makes more sense for the input box to be at the bottom. However, that still isn't enough because I move my eyes regardless. So I thought of a genius idea. What if I just straight up, like, don't? What if I don't see the text that I'm typing in, yet it works as a hot string? So let me show you how it works now. Once again, I type in grep, and now I want to see the help page for it in a less window. Okay, so I press the hotkey once again and type in HL, I think, and then tab or any key that I desire. And here it is. I didn't need to move my eyes, I just needed to precisely type in what I need to type in. And just so you know, you're not trapped by this concoction, because once again you press the hotkey and then press HLL accidentally. Maybe like your finger slipped or something of that nature. Once again you press tab or space or anything and it says no key of that. So if you're wrong, well, you're just wrong. You won't have to like reload the script or anything of that nature. It just says that you're wrong and even says how so. But nevertheless, you should probably keep your hotstrings as short as possible, which is also the case in usual hotstrings, which, as I said, unfortunately don't work for me. So I really like this way to do it because no eye movement necessary and no weird backspacing necessary to get my string that I want to have. Interesting, I can't delete it. The terminal is weird sometimes. You know what's extra cool about hotstrings? You can have copy pastas. So I press the hotkey, type in queen, tab, boom. I got this amazing copy pasta. Yeah. And other stuff. Let's actually look at the hotstrings that I have. First of all, you can also have some function return a different value every time. A couple of those that I at least should be using but don't, and I hope I will start to, is these, what, 5? Yeah, 5. So I'm typing some message, for example, oh, it's, and then I need the current time. Instead of moving my mouse usually to look at the time here, I can just say time, boop, and here you go, you got the time. Or if I wanted to say what's the weekday, here it is, it's Thursday, and even the date. And then I added stuff that pastes all of that together. And because once again, I don't need to move my eyes to here, to here, to here, anywhere, I can just continue looking at there, type in the string that I know already, and get the expanded hot string, which is quite great. All right, I'm gonna stop like teasing you and actually show you how it works. First of all, I use the common idea that I started using at some point, using maps for pretty much any situation. This very likely could be a switch statement, but a switch statement would be far slower, especially as you add more keys. It's incomparable. So a map of function objects for the strings that you get by calling functions. And then we have static hot strings, which are essentially just a key to the actual hot string that you need. And now the Hotstringer class. So this whole thing works by using an input hook. How does it look? Let me show you. GetInput is just a abstraction of making an input hook, and it's being used by this class, so you have to include it. You create an input hook, but in this current situation, an input hook with no options, right? Yeah, and with the end keys that you specify. So by default, if you type something in, like you press the hotkey and you're like, wait, actually I don't want to. You just press escape and you can type normally again. So you can add more keys to cancel. And first of all, you need to specify them in end keys. Maybe you want, I don't know, what's a good key? 0, for example. Not sure how it exactly would work, but it should work, or maybe like F1. As you can see, to type those in, you need to type those in the syntax of send. But not only do you need to type them in here if they are an cancel key, like escape, then you need to type their name into the cancel and keys array. So say we add something like space. Well, now space will cancel the current hot string. Let's actually try this out. I press the hotkey and then space, and I exit that Hotstringer entire stick, and I can type normally again. Well, great. But how exactly do we get this name of the key? Well, you use my getInput function, or just these lines like of the input hook. You don't need to use my abstraction. It's just that I find it annoying that I need at least 4 lines for something very simple, when in reality, with input hooks, I usually want to start it and wait it. And for some reason, start, let's see what start returns. Fucking nothing! You might as well return this, so I can chain this thing. And what does wait return? It returns number, meaning a boolean that it either timed out or didn't. Okay, like fair enough, but still I would rather it return this. So we could do something like start, wait. Unfortunately we can't. This just will straight up not work, which is why you need at least 3 lines for this entire thing. And well, by just using getInput, you no longer do. That's the entire reason this even exists. It's not really required, but by using getInput, let's use infos as well. First, we type in getInput. Well, first of all, we included getInput. Perfect. Call it. In options, you specify L1 to mean get just 1 character. And, well, actually, we don't even need to, now that I think about it. I'm going to explain why. And you specify the end key that you want to specify as a cancel key, which is why you're using this, to get the name that you would otherwise maybe not know. So maybe we need to get the name of space. Well, you know how to specify it in the send format, which is exactly what we're doing here, but we don't know what it's called, supposedly. So we run the script. Hold up. Right, actually, this returns the input hook object, but we also need to get input from it, because we can also get stuff like end reason, end key, and so on. Oh, we don't need to get input, we need to get end key. If we used input, then what we would get in the info is the space, if not nothing, because technically we didn't put in any input, we just put in the end key. So get the end key, save, run, and we press space, right? And we get the name of that key. Let's try something like more useful, I guess. So L shift, for example. Let's run this. No, not like this. Run this, press L shift, and we figure out that, oh, in the end key way, it's also called L shift. Well, perfect. Now you know a way to know how to get names of cancel end keys. Now we just need to specify at least one end key that will finish your hot string, that will expand it. And I actually don't recommend doing this here. Doesn't really make sense. which is why there's this different file, which I'm probably going to rename literally now. This entire file that you're looking at is actually one huge hotkey, which first of all creates the dynamic Hotstrings map, so the map that contains function objects. And then the static Hotstrings map, which just contains strings. Great. And once we go down, even more down, that's where we specify the end keys. The escape end key is there by default because you need at least some way to cancel it. And for me, escape makes a lot of sense to be so. Let's actually delete this because I don't want to use space as a cancel key. But for other end keys, which are accepting end keys, we have enter, tab, and space. So if you press enter or tab or space, your hotstring will expand. And also important factor, when we look at this, we have, once again, dynamic hotstrings and static hotstrings. So this expects you to assign a map to it, to each one of those. And that's how you do it. If you don't have dynamic hotstrings and you only have static hotstrings, so just strings, you don't have to have this line at all. Like, it's okay to not. And after you do all this, you call the initiate method, and that's all you need. So let's look at what initiate actually does. First of all, it creates the input hook that waits for you to type in stuff. Once you press an end key, which is not a cancel key, or I guess the cancel key as well. Once you press any end key that you specified, it checks. Is this key that you pressed a cancel key? So does this array contain it? And well, has value is not actually a default thing. It's a thing that I implemented for you to be able to search through an array. So let's look at it. In extensions, array HK, we have this. Oh, that's not what I want to do. VIP, come on, wow. So here I implement a method for arrays to look through an array and see if it contains some value. So it's pretty simple. You have to include it as well, which I do here. So we have first dependency, second dependency, third dependency, which is actually a library by Descalada. Once again, it's in extension string.hk. But also probably makes sense to get the latest version because I personally probably don't. Then we also have ClipSend, which I have a video on, and which is the thing that we actually use to expand our hotstring. I explain why ClipSend exists in the video on it, but long story short, it's faster. Much faster. Okay, so we create the input hook, check, is this a cancel key? If it is, then you see this exited info, which as you can see, it doesn't stay there long, but if you want it to appear even shorter, you can change this value. It's in milliseconds. And well, if you exit, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't expand any hotstring because you didn't want to. But if you didn't press a cancel key and instead pressed a expand key, so any other one, you call the paste method, which actually pastes our hotstrings. Okay, so if the dynamic hotstrings map has the input that we typed in, so where is it? Dynamic hotstrings. So if you type in red num, dynamic hotstrings, the map has that key, and it's like, oh, okay, I have it, therefore let's do this thing. And it calls the function object of that key and gets the output to a variable. But if dynamic hotstring doesn't exist, or rather if that key doesn't exist in it, then maybe it's in static hotstrings. For example, you type in IMM to get immediately. It's such a fucking hard word, like, goddamn. One of the hardest words for me to type in, honestly. You know what trips me up the most? The fact that this is an E and not an I. Like, what? Why? Whatever. So yeah, you type in IMM, so that means that static hotstrings has that key. Well, great, in that case, just get that value to a variable once again. But if that input that you typed in doesn't exist in either maps, that means it doesn't exist anywhere, in which case you get this message. Now let's actually look at it. I press the hotkey, type in stuff, press tab, and it says, yo, no such thing. But if all of this is correct and you typed in a key that exists, then you ClipSend the output, so the value. And that's pretty much it. And now I can go to some Discord server and say nas, and here we go. It's my favorite anecdote. No fucking idea how to say that in English properly, because joke doesn't really convey the feeling of anecdote. The Russians that watch my channel know what's up. If you're not Russian, I mean, sorry, but you're already better off. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the Hotstringer. One important thing is for you to remember to include the dependencies, and you can have the same thing. Or you can just take this as an idea and implement it in a different way, which you find nicer for whatever reason. So now I hope I've given myself enough reason to actually use Hotstrings, because I've made them as good for myself as they can possibly be. And if you enjoyed this video, press a like, type some comment, maybe you have a question or suggestion. Definitely subscribe so you don't miss my content, but most importantly, stay fresh, cheese bags. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!